Please welcome the President of the Overseas Press Club of America, Scott Kraft.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Annual Awards ceremony for the Overseas Press Club of America. Tonight, we celebrate the finest international reporting in 2024, and also all who do this very important work. We gather as compatriots, bound by a shared mission to bring truth to light no matter the cost. The mission has never been more critical. The OPC was born 86 years ago here in New York City in a world in turmoil and on the brink of war. Our original mission was based on kinship, fellowship, and the trading of best practices, to helping colleagues navigate and cover the world, and to honor the best of the best work. We have often gathered for these awards against a backdrop of crisis, and tonight is no different. Press freedom is under threat, as we all know. Governments are trying to manipulate and silence us. Our colleagues are targeted, harassed, and intimidated. And for the first time in memory, we face many of those same threats at home. The people in this room know what it's like to report from countries where democracy is not even a pretense and where the press is under daily assault. We recognize the playbook: gaslight the public, criminalize reporting that runs counter to the official line, and declare journalists the enemy. The OPC condemns all attacks on a free press, both at home and abroad. And we are also committed, as I know everyone in this room is, to helping our colleagues do their work without restrictions and with integrity. Tonight, we salute colleagues who brought us stories that mattered in 2024. The war in the Middle East, the biggest story in the world last year, dominated this year's awards. But we also honor exceptional work from across the globe. You will see winners tonight whose work emerged from Russia and Syria, as well as Mexico, Haiti, India, and Ecuador. We celebrate these winners and their courage, their excellence, and their unshakable commitment to the craft. I'd like to take a moment to thank a few people who make this evening possible. Thanks to John Danishevsky, our awards chair, who brings class and high standards to everything he does. To Patricia Kranz, the OPC's executive director, who is the backbone of this organization. Also thanks to Chad Bouchard, the OPC's digital whiz and bulletin editor, and to our Board of Governors, whose commitment and energy fuel our success. A special thank you to Reuters and Bloomberg, whose generosity and support includes sponsoring the welcome and post-dinner receptions. Always important to thank the people who buy your drinks. Also, thank you to our sponsors, Mercedes-Benz, Citi, and IBM. And also to our friends and supporters, ABC News, the Associated Press, the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, the Financial Times, the Los Angeles Times, NBC News, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. To our sponsors, supporters, and friends, thank you for believing in the mission of international journalism. May we continue to support, protect, and inspire one another in the pursuit of a free and fearless press. To our honorees, congratulations. Your work does more than inform, it changes the world. And I'd encourage everyone to celebrate on social media tonight, hashtag OPC Awards 86. It's on the front of your program. One of our most solemn traditions every year is to light a candle to honor journalists who have been killed, imprisoned, or harassed while doing their job. The tradition has special meaning this past year, one of the deadliest on record for journalists. Last year, 124 journalists and media workers were killed doing this work worldwide, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. That toll is the highest since CPJ began keeping track. The previous high in 2007 was 113 during the Iraq War. 82 of those deaths last year came amid the war in Gaza, where our colleagues continue to face grave danger and unacceptable barriers in their efforts to report what is happening. We did have some good news last year, and we celebrated the release of the Wall Street Journal's Evan Gershkovich, who had been held for 16 months in a Russian prison. The journal, supported by the OPC and dozens of organizations, many of them in this room, led the effort to keep Evan's cause in front of the public, and it made a difference. We are so pleased that Evan is again free. It's my honor to invite Charles Farrell, Deputy Editor of the Journal, to say a few words.
Good evening. It's really a tremendous delight to be here and a pleasure to say some words tonight, because for 491 days when we made these kinds of remarks, they were exhortations, they were calls to action, they were in the service of trying to get Evan out of prison. And tonight it's not. It is expression of thanks, of joy, and of gratitude to so many people who helped get him free. So I want to thank this community, foreign correspondents, the Overseas Press Club, Evan's friends, his colleagues, the core of foreign correspondents. Believe in the things that we believe in. The thing that we believe in is telling stories. Reporting matters, stories matter. Really, 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 really matter. In the hours after Evan missed a check-in with the security team, and after we learned that what had happened was that he had been taken, we made a decision, and the decision was to do journalism, was to do a lot of stories, many, many, many stories. Many of you wrote lots and lots of stories. We took over our homepage many times. We wrapped A1 many times. Many of you came to our office to read Evan's stories, our 24-hour readathon, which caused many of us to lose our voices, but it was kind of fun. But the answer was stories, and it was clear from the outset that what Russia had done was cruel and cold and calculating. It was part of a game, and we did not want to play that game. Our values are different. We wanted not to suppress and not to hold, but to tell more and more stories. And so I just want to, it is great to be here tonight in a celebration of stories, because stories was what mattered. We had to keep the story of Evan and of his imprisonment and of his being taken as a hostage as prominent as we possibly could. So we did it. The stories were fun. The stories were difficult. Most delightfully, of course, was Evan's own story. Never, I think, as an editor, never have we been quite so happy to see a name move from a headline to a byline as Evan's did when he appeared in our pages again. I can't wait for his book. It's gonna be awesome. It'll be a banger. Pretty excited about that. But I want to again extend my gratitude and the gratitude of the Journal, and thanks to the community of foreign correspondents who did what we all should do, which is tell more stories. I am thrilled that Evan is out, obviously, but there are, by the grim tally of CPJ, 361 people who are imprisoned, who are not out. This work isn't over. There are many, 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 many more stories to tell, and the people in this room will tell them. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. The Associated Press has a long tradition of fighting for the safety of reporters stationed abroad, but it is now also waging a very public battle for access for reporters at home. I'm honored to welcome Julie Pace, Executive Editor of the AP, to the stage to say a few words and light the candle this year After Julie does that, let's please observe a moment of silence.
Thank you. Gathering tonight here to honor colleagues who work in some of the most challenging locations around the world for journalists is a reminder of the incredible protection the First Amendment offers journalists here in the United States. The Constitution's protection of free speech and a free press is what allows us to report, to investigate, to hold powerful interests accountable without the fear of retribution. That's why it was so important to those of us at the Associated Press to stand up for this principle when the White House retaliated against us, because they didn't like the words that we used. Now, this may have seemed like a small matter on the surface, the name of a body of water, but it was really about something so much bigger. It was about the ability of all news organizations, and indeed all Americans, to be able to speak freely and without the risk of government retaliation. At AP, we are an independent, nonpartisan news organization that reaches audiences around the world with a range of political views. We didn't take this stand to be oppositional or to pick a fight. We did it precisely because we do represent thousands of news organizations. We did it because we know what it's like for journalists to work in places where the protections of a First Amendment don't exist, to work in countries where the consequences of resisting government pressure are even greater. It's not just access that they risk losing in these places, it's their physical safety for themselves, sometimes for their families. Yet day after day, they stand up for the role of a free press around the world. They bravely tell stories that governments and other powerful interests don't want them to. They tell stories that would otherwise not be told. As the dangers to journalists around the world grow, it's more important than ever that we here rally together to uphold the protections afforded to the press in the United States.
Thank you, Julie. Before we announce our winners tonight, I'd like to play a short video message from the head judge for this awards, John Danishevsky.
Good evening. I am John Danishevsky, former Vice President for Standards at the Associated Press and the President of the Overseas Press Club Foundation. I have had the honor to serve as Chief Judge for tonight's awards. Over the course of 2 months, more than 100 judges with deep experience in international news reviewed and assessed more than 400 works of journalism in text, video, photography, and audio and digital formats, making this year's among the most competitive in the Overseas Press Club history. I would like to thank all of our judges and the jury chairs for their deep reflection and deliberation. I congratulate the winners whom you are about to meet and all the journalists and news organizations who competed for these 22 awards. The courage, fortitude, dedication, and professionalism that they display stands as a stinging rebuke to those who would disrespect, denigrate, and discredit the work of journalists around the world. From the razed cities of Gaza to the battlefields of Ukraine to the migrant trails of Central America and the fentanyl laboratories of this continent, news organizations old and new painted a portrait of the world as it is, bringing to life suffering and cruelty and striving to hold the powerful to account. It is a noble endeavor, and our judges' task in choosing was not easy. And now let us meet and honor and celebrate the extraordinary winners of these prestigious prizes, as well as the runners-up who will be receiving citations for their work. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce our MC for this evening. Marcus Mabry is Senior Vice President of Digital Editorial and Programming at CNN, and we are proud to say a former president of the OPC. He has held multiple posts at the New York Times and was a foreign correspondent and later chief of correspondence at Newsweek. He's the author of several books, including a memoir, White Bucks and Black Eyed Peas, Coming of Age Black in White America. Take it away, Marcus.
Good evening. Thank you, Scott, for that generous introduction. It is wonderful to be here amongst this fraternity and sorority of those of us who cover the world and care about it and devote tireless energy and hours to it and sometimes pay the highest price. It is an honor to host the presentation of the 2025 OPC Awards to the outstanding journalists we will honor this evening. We will intersperse the award presentations with other parts of the program to keep things moving along. Each winner or group of winners has recorded a video describing their work. Following the video, they will come to the stage and receive their award certificate, have their photo taken, and bask in your applause. I will also announce the names of the organizations winning runner-up citations for each award. I'm presenting the awards in the order listed in Dateline magazine, which each of you have a copy of at your seat, and feel free to follow along as we go. The Hal Boyle Award, sponsored by Norm Pearlstein in honor of his friend Jerry Flint, is for Best Newspaper, News Service, Newsletter, or Digital Reporting from Abroad. The runner-up citation goes to Christopher Miller and the staff of the Financial Times for Russia's war in Ukraine. The winners are the staff of the New York Times for Middle East Upended. In 2024, the Israel-Hamas war expanded to redraw the Middle East. In exclusive after exclusive, the Times brought the world the news in stunning detail. From Assad's final days to Israel's penetration of Hezbollah's top ranks, to heartbreaking scenes before and after Israeli bombings in Gaza, to Iran and Israel taking their conflict across new red lines.
Hello, I'm Christina Goldbaum.
Hello, I'm Hoida Saad.
And I'm Patrick Kingsley.
We are correspondents for the New York Times based in Beirut and Jerusalem.
We're part of a big team of reporters and editors in Gaza, Jerusalem, the West Bank, Beirut, Damascus, and elsewhere who contributed to our submission to the OPC Awards.
With all the human suffering and devastation in the region, winning an award is no cause for celebration. Still, we and our colleagues are incredibly honored that our work trying to document that tragedy and the momentous shifts in the Middle East have been recognized by such a prestigious prize.
And in receiving this award, we pay tribute to and mourn our many colleagues who have been killed covering these conflicts, including at least 160 in Gaza, 2 in Israel, and 6 in Lebanon.
Winners, please come up to accept the award. The William Worthy Award, sponsored by Simon and June Lee Center for Global Journalism, is for Best Newspaper, News Service, Newsletter, or Digital Interpretation of International Affairs. The citation goes to the Washington Post staff for Regression's Long Arm. Winning the Worthy Award is the staff of the Wall Street Journal for exposing Putin's police state from inside a Russian prison and beyond. Given the dramatic events surrounding the release of correspondent Evan Gershkovich, The Wall Street Journal could have easily produced a first-hand account of his captivity and left it at that. Instead, the Journal's team used Evan's wrongful detention as a jumping-off point to produce truly groundbreaking reporting on the Kremlin's global spying operations, publishing eye-opening revelations about how Russian agents have aggressively penetrated the West and how its security services have taken a leading role within the Putin regime.
Hi, my name's Joe Parkinson from the Wall Street Journal.
And I'm Drew Henshaw.
This award holds a special significance for our news organization and stems from one of our most challenging stories in our 130-year history, the arrest of our colleague, Evan Gershkovich.
Evan's arrest created an agonizing dilemma for our newsroom. We had to report on his case and the wrongful detention of other Americans in Russian prison without endangering any of their safety or their freedom.
Our reporting began with a simple question: who took Evan and the other Americans wrongfully detained in Russian prisons? Answering that question took us on a reporting trip across the world and revealed the secret spy unit that not only took Evan, but other Americans.
What we couldn't know is that Evan, locked into Moscow's Lefortovo prison, was continuing his own reporting, taking notes and asking questions in the face of unimaginable hardship.
Today we're happy to share this award with Evan, who is free and writing his book, but there are many other reporters languishing in jail in Russia and other countries who cannot, and we'd like to share this award with them.
Congratulations. Now, on to photography. The Robert Capa Gold Medal for exceptional courage and enterprise is sponsored by Getty Images. The runner-up citation goes to Mohammed Salam of Reuters for Fragments of Despair, a visual chronicle of Gaza, 2024. The Robert Capa Award goes to Laura Bushnak and Nariman El-Mofti of the New York Times for Gaza's injured children. Courage in conflict is often measured in proximity to the front lines, but Nariman El-Mofti and Laura Bushnak remind us that bravery also lies in bearing witness to survival. In documenting the lives of Palestinian children evacuated from Gaza, the photographers' images don't define their subjects by their suffering, insisting instead on the presence, the personhood, and the futures of Gaza's children. Their photos stand as a testament to the ways photography can dignify even the most painful realities.
I'm Laura Bushnak, and I'm a Palestinian photographer based in Amman, Jordan. As the foreign media is still not allowed to cover the war in Gaza, I did not hesitate when my editors asked me to continue the projects in Italy. For Bayan, Sarah, Shayma, and Ahmed, they will always remind us of what is still happening as they carry the war with their buddies. Thank you, Gaia Tripoli, Muna Bushna, Alan Yahos, and Nariman El-Mofti. I am honored to share this award with all of you.
I'm honored to be recognized, but this recognition comes with a heavy heart. These innocent souls, just like Shaimet Shadi, a 5-year-old with a badly amputated leg, carries unimaginable pain. Her only dream, like others, and her only hope is to go back home. Thank you, Mona Bushnak, Gaia Tripoli, Alan Yuhas, and thank you, Laura Bushnak, who I share this with.
Congratulations. The Olivier Roubaud Award, sponsored by David Ake, honors the best news photography from abroad in any medium. The citation goes to Udlin Joseph and Ramon Espinosa of the Associated Press for Haiti, Surviving in Gangland. The award goes to Samar Abu Alouf of the New York Times for Out of Gaza. Abu Alouf's poignant and powerful portraits of survivors of the Gaza war stood out for their authenticity and their empathy. Her personal connection to this story, having lived through the war in Gaza herself and spending months with the people she photographed, brings a depth and nuance to the images that is both haunting and humbling. The photographs are not just a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but also a reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict.
أنا سمر أبو العوف، مصورة صحفية من مدينة غزة، أعمل كمصورة مستقلة مع صحيفة نيويورك تايمز. سعيدة جدا بحصولي على هذه الجائزة التي تمثل أهمية نقل الصورة الإنسانية للعالم. إن اعترافكم بعملي هذا يؤكد أن الصورة قد وصلت إليكم، ويزيد من إصراري على الاستمرار في نقل هذه الصورة. إن عملي في توثيق هذه القصة لم يكن سهلا، نظرا لمعايشتي وقربي من هذه الحالات التي قمت بسماع قصصها وتوثيقها. أقدم كل شكري لصحيفة نيويورك تايمز ومحرري الصور في صحيفة نيويورك تايمز الذين كانوا دائما يدعمونني ويساندونني.
Congratulations. The Danish Siddiqui Award for Best Feature Photography on an international theme is sponsored by Reuters. Lindsay Addario of the New York Times gets the citation for her photographs of Sonia, a young Ukrainian girl who had lost her father at the front line and was suffering from a rare form of cancer that forced the removal of both of her eyes. The award goes to Moises Saman of The New Yorker for the fall of the Assad regime. As Syrians flocked to the notorious Sinaya and Palestinian branch prisons to search for disappeared loved ones after the fall of the Assad regime, Saman accompanied relatives hunting for traces of survivors. He captured their anguish while they followed a grim trail of evidence at morgues, mass graves, and funerals. The work is a stark but unflinching record of more than a decade of violence, largely hidden from the public eye, and an important historic record of this wrenching chapter of Syrian history.
Hello, my name is Moises Saman and I'm a contributing photographer with the New Yorker magazine. Last December, just 2 days after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, New Yorker writer John Lee Anderson and I arrived in Damascus to document the aftermath. What we found there was not just the collapse of a regime, but the haunting remains of a brutal history. Nowhere was this more present than in Sinaya prison, a place that still casts a long shadow over Syria. The photographs in the winning series don't aim to summarize the war. They reflect fragments, moments of grief, resilience, and survival that resist a clean narrative. Because bearing witness is more than just about images. It's about remembering and refusing to look away. I'd like to thank the Overseas Press Club of America for the honor of this recognition, and to David Remnick, Joanna Milter, Andrew Katz, and John Lee Anderson at The New Yorker for your support and trust. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Moises. The Lowell Thomas Award is for the best radio, audio, or podcast, and is sponsored by Deborah Amos. The judges for this award chose to give 2 citations. Ling Ling Wei, Kate Linebaugh, Maria Byrne, Alex Rodriguez Espinosa, and Annie Minoff of the Wall Street Journal for The Missing Minister. And Elsa Chang, Janaki Mehta, Mallory Hu, Patrick Jarwin Watanana, and Emily Fang of NPR for Taiwan in 2024, Stories of Colonization and Democratization. And the award goes to Madeline Byron, Samara Freemark, Natalie Jablowski, Reman Tenkahar, Parker Yesko, and their team at The New Yorker for In the Dark, Season 3, The Killings in Haditha. In a forensic investigation into the 2005 killing of 24 Iraqis by U.S. Marines, the New Yorker's team prized loose testimony and photos that the military had sought to conceal from the public and tracked down survivors and the Marines involved. To produce the podcast, the New Yorker spent years filing suit under the Freedom of Information Act, seeking access to documents about the murders. The 8-hour series includes details about the reporting process, offering not only a chilling account of the massacre, but a master class in journalism.
Hi, my name is Madeline Barron, and I'm the host of the investigative podcast In the Dark. All of us at In the Dark would like to thank the Overseas Press Club for recognizing our reporting into the killings in Haditha. I would also like to thank the team at In the Dark and everyone who worked on this story for their 4 years of commitment to this reporting. And I would like to thank Condé Nast and The New Yorker for supporting this story. On November 19, 2005, U.S. Marines entered homes in the town of Haditha, Iraq. They killed 25 civilians that day. Grandparents, children, mothers huddled with their families. The youngest killed that day was just 3 years old. For years, the survivors have been trying to get justice and to get the world to care about what happened to their families that day. They spoke to us at length for this story, and they worked with us in our lawsuit against the U.S. military, helping us to force the U.S. government to release photos taken after the killings, photos that The New Yorker published and that revealed to the world the true horror of what happened. This award is dedicated to those survivors and to the memory of the family members who were killed. Thank you.
Congratulations. Accepting the award is Willing Davidson, a senior editor at The New Yorker and an editor on In the Dark. We'll take a break for you to enjoy your meals, and I will return in about 20 minutes. Bon appetit. So sorry to interrupt your conversations, but if you'll take your seats, we'll get back to the awards. Thank you so much. The David Kaplan Award for Best TV or Video Spot News is sponsored by ABC News. The citation is awarded to Germana Karache, Clarissa Ward, Katie Pugliese, Jeremy Diamond, Fred Pleiken, and CNN staff for the fall of Assad in Syria. The award goes to James Longman, Suhail Udin, Ghazi Balkis, Kolm Omoloy, Fahid Al-Mawla, and the staff of ABC News for Inside Syria, Assad Overthrown. James Longman and his team comprehensively and determinedly cover the entire trajectory of the rebellion that brought down the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, his overthrow and exile to Russia, as well as the aftermath and the reaction of Israel and the world. At the same time, Longman takes us inside the opulence, wealth, and cruelty of the Assad regime. Viewers are given tours of the presidential palace, Assad's escape tunnel, Syria's infamous prisons and mass graves, as well as interviews with families looking for missing relatives.
Thank you so much for this tremendous honor. Look, I'm so proud of everything that ABC News did in Syria, not just our team, who were working in pretty unpredictable and frenetic circumstances, but also teams in London and in New York who were processing our material, making sure we could get it on air. It really was a network-wide effort, and I really feel that ABC News as a whole really stepped up. It was brilliant. Look, the first story I ever did, I was 24 years old. I was inside Syria as a young freelancer, and I met a father whose son had been killed right in front of him by Assad's security forces. It's a story that stayed with me my whole life. It stayed with me as I met Syrians for these many, many years who have lost their country to the violence in refugee camps in Calais, in Lebanon, in Iraq. Syrians have been dispersed all over the world, and so many of us have been documenting the civil war and its fallout for more than a decade. And once more, I found myself in December standing in front of a father whose son had been killed. He was identifying his body in a morgue. And it made me think of just all the Syrians I've met over the years who've lost so much. But there was also so much hope. There was so much optimism. It's an uncertain time for Syria, of course it is, but what a privilege to be there while Syrians were retaking their country. Thank you so much for this award.
Congratulations. The Edward R. Murrow Award, sponsored by CBS News, is for Best Documentary under 20 minutes. The citation goes to the staff of NBC News Digital for Born into Gaza. The award goes to Marcia Biggs, Sarah Just, Morgan Till, Eric O'Connor, and Andre Poultry of PBS NewsHour for Haiti in Crisis. The PBS series takes viewers from the Miami River in Florida to the slums of Port-au-Prince to show the devastating impact of American guns and policy on the lives of Haitians. Scenes of bullet-ridden homes and sewage-strewn streets accompany gripping interviews with the victims and perpetrators of unspeakable gang violence. These deeply reported segments are a rare glimpse into the collapsing country.
Thank you so much. Thank you, PBS, PBS NewsHour, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, our EP, Sarah Just, our leader for foreign coverage, Morgan Till. I also want to thank Teresa Cebrian and Alfredo Delara for their work on the Miami River portion of this series. The Haiti portion of this series was a real labor of love. I pushed for 3 years to make it happen. And when we finally did, I was lucky enough to have two colleagues on the ground, Andre Polch and Eric O'Connor, two of the most honorable and meticulous journalists that I've ever worked with, who also brought generosity and compassion to the job, not only for me and for each other, but for the people whose stories we told. These were some of the most difficult interviews that I've ever done, and the fate of the people that I met and talked with in Haiti haunts me to this day. There is so much trauma. So I want to send all my love and thanks to the people of Haiti who opened their lives and their hearts to us. And I pray for a day when they can finally receive good governance at home and sincere international support from abroad. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for honoring their stories. And personally, this is a huge honor for me. So thank you very, very much.
Congratulations. The Peter Jennings Award for Best Long-Form Documentary is sponsored by the Jennings family. The judges awarded 2 citations: Laura Mofta, Tong Hee-young Kim, Claire Galafaro, Emily Sternlicht, and staffs of Frontline PBS and the Associated Press for South Korea's Adoption Reckoning. And Sebastian Woods Walker, Adam Desiderio, Lama Al-Arian, Javier Manzano, and Shruk Ayla of Evident Media for In Real Life, A Hidden War. And the winners are Kavitha Chakuru, Sharif Abdel Kuduz, Adrian Hospel, Layla Al-Arian, and Ashraf Mashaharawi of Al Jazeera English with Media Town for Fault Lines, The Night Won't End. The Al Jazeera English documentary reveals the human cost of the war in Gaza, documenting attacks on civilians by the Israeli military and the role of the United States in the conflict. The reporting is anchored in first-hand experiences of 3 Palestinian families who recount the horrors they endured as Gaza came under attack and their ongoing struggle for survival. The Night Won't End is a remarkable, gut-wrenching, yet cinematically beautiful film.
My name is Layla Al-Arian, and I'm the executive producer of Fault Lines on Al Jazeera English. Thank you so much to the Overseas Press Club, to the judges, and to everyone who worked on this film. The Night Won't End would not have been possible without our courageous colleagues on the ground in Gaza, who worked under the most unimaginable circumstances: starvation, displacement, grief, and the constant threat of death. More than 200 of our colleagues have been killed in Gaza with US weapons. As journalists, it's our duty to hold those responsible accountable, and at the very least, to condemn it unequivocally. We filmed this over a year ago, but the horrors we documented remain a daily reality for more than 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. It took tremendous strength and courage for the Salem, Al-Ghaf, and Rajab families to speak with our team. Despite their overwhelming grief, they never lost faith that telling their story might move someone or help end this nightmare once and for all. We hope this film stands as a record so the world knows what happened and that one day there may be justice and accountability.
Congratulations. The Ed Cunningham Magazine Award is sponsored by Michael S. Cyril. The citation goes to Thomas Brennan of Mother Jones and the War Horse for My Platoon's Fight to Survive and Hail from the Bloodiest Battle of the Iraq War. The winner is Sarah Topol of the New York Times Magazine for The Deserter. Topol's piece combines a complicated love story with the historical sweep of contemporary Russia, leading up to and into the disaster of the Ukraine war. The exquisite details in Topol's story speak to patient, dogged reporting and create a compelling narrative in vivid, novelesque prose. The resulting piece is a private account of one couple's tribulations and an exploration of the relationship between the individual, the government, and state ideology. Its resonance is both universal and deeply rooted in the particularities of the Russian experience.
My name is Sarah Topol, and I'm a contributing writer to the New York Times Magazine. I'd like to thank the judges and the Overseas Press Club for this incredible honor. My investigation into the Russian military would not have been possible without the support of the New York Times Magazine. Thank you to Mark Chino, Bill Wasik, and Jake Silverstein for their faith in this article. And thank you especially to Jake for believing in all of my ideas for so many years. A broader thank you to all the great people at the magazine who worked tirelessly all summer closing this article. They threw their whole heart into this work, and I am eternally grateful. Especially fact-checkers Kyla Jones and Riley Blanton for their patience with me and eagle eyes. The biggest thanks of all, of course, is to the brave deserters, especially to Ivan and Anna, who risked everything to overcome their fears and misgivings and let me into their lives. It was an honor to write their story. Thank you so much for this award.
Congratulations. Now we move on to the Best Cartoon Award, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz. The citation goes to Kevin Cal Callaher for Cal's Cartoons. The winner is Amy Kurzweil of the Los Angeles Times for Opcomic, a Palestinian, an Israeli, and a Path to Peace. Amy Kurzweil's entry, written in a graphic novel format, eschews satire, but effectively illustrates the pain, frustration, and anger felt by human beings gravely affected by war in the Middle East. Kurzweil channels their raw experiences not into a continuation of the cycle of vengeance, but towards radical acceptance and reconciliation. The piece, written in close counsel with her subjects, stares at the reality of barbarism, then touchingly seeks a way forward.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Kurzweil. I'm a cartoonist coming to you from my studio in San Francisco, and I'm so pleased to accept this award for my graphic essay with the LA Times. Thank you so much to the Overseas Press Club and to everyone at the LA Times, especially my editor, Philip Gray. My comic was written in close counsel with Maoz Inan and Aziz Abu Sara. They are peacemakers with a vision for Israeli and Palestinian solidarity. They are dreamers, and this essay began with a dream that grief itself would reveal the possibility of hope. I've spent most of my career writing and drawing graphic memoir about my own family's history. All of my Jewish grandparents fled Europe. My mother's parents lost every member of their families in the Holocaust. And what drew me to Maoz and Aziz's story was what they decided to do with their grief at the killing of their family members. I did not grow up hearing stories about people like Aziz, a Palestinian in East Jerusalem whose brother was arrested, tortured, and killed by the IDF. And despite this and many other injustices, Aziz became a successful entrepreneur who believes in cooperation with his Jewish neighbors. And I also did not grow up hearing stories about Israelis like Maoz, whose parents' killing on October 7th strengthened his conviction that the security and safety of 7 million Israelis is interdependent with the safety and security of 7 million Palestinians. Mao's helped me see that Jewish grief does not justify more killing. Drawing specifically helps me internalize the feelings of my characters, and my hope is that experiencing this drawn story will deepen my readers' empathy for individuals like Aziz and Maoz, who have borne the brunt of this conflict with such dignity and intelligence.
Hello, we are very grateful for the Overseas Press Club Award that Amy is receiving for the illustration of both of our stories. And we are here just to tell you thank you for caring about us. Thank you for supporting us. We need you desperately to amplify our voices, to be part of our movement. But Maoz and I are part of Interact International, which is trying to build this movement of bringing Americans, Europeans, Israelis, and Palestinians, people from the global south, everyone together to try to make a change in Israel and Palestine, because we know the rebel effects will affect the whole world.
And we are Palestinian and Israelis, both are bereaved families. We lost our loved one in the conflict, and we are here to tell you that we are on the same side, and we are thankful for you, for your support, and for being on our side, the side of peace and the side of reconciliation, and together we're going to make peace in the Middle East.
Now, Scott will introduce our keynote speaker.
Our keynote speaker tonight is someone who embodies the very spirit of fearless and compassionate journalism. Nicholas Kristof is a two-time Pulitzer Prize winner. He is also one of the most influential voices in global reporting. Through his decades at the New York Times and his relentless coverage of human rights abuses, global poverty, and humanitarian crises, he is not just informed, but has driven real change. As many of you know, when Nick is not traveling from global crisis to crisis, he spends much of his time tending to his family's farm in Oregon. We're grateful he has taken time away from that to be with us tonight. His work is a testament to the power of journalism as a force for good. His storytelling moves us, his advocacy challenges us, and his commitment to truth inspires us all. Please join me in welcoming Nick Kristof.
Thank you all. I'm really honored to be here. Some extraordinary winners tonight, and this is also a moment to celebrate the release of Evan Gershkovich since last year, and the work of AP in defending the rights of access for all of us. Having attended a number of these in the audience, I also know that the most important part of a keynote speech is not its eloquence, but its brevity. So in conclusion, okay, that was a joke. I want to also give a shout out to Lindsay Addario, who will shortly receive the President's Award. I've had the privilege of working with Lindsay in a number of countries, and you know, my first rule of staying safe in conflicts, it's you never get in a car with a photographer. You know, when a photographer hears gunfire, they immediately want to rush toward it. So it's great to admire photographers, to honor them, to give them awards, but you never want to trust them with your steering wheel. Now, these are truly some extraordinary times that we face, with challenges for journalism that are immense. We have real challenges for our business model, with 2.5 newspapers going out of business each week around the country. We have a crisis in trust for journalism. And then we have an administration that is moving in directions that in many ways remind me of authoritarian governments that I've covered around the world for decades. And we're divided ourselves within journalism about how to respond. How do we cover an administration like this? Do we use words like lie, or is that taking sides? Are we too prone to both sidesism, quoting one side and then the other? Are we engaged in sane-washing, as some suggest? Or conversely, are we just a puddle of liberal elitism that doesn't understand the country that we're covering? So we face immense challenges and divisions, but let's also recognize that we've been given a responsibility of covering just a pivotal moment in history. Think of this as history giving us an incredible assignment, maybe the best and most important of our lives. And it's a test. This is, I think, a test of our courage, of our independence, of our integrity, and also of our ability at the same time to rebuild that business model and restore that trust. And I do think that this year we're rising to the occasion. And I've got to say, as somebody who, early in my career used to file by telex, which for the younger people in the room, so when I was covering the American Revolution, we used to, never mind. But as somebody who has been around for a while, I'm just awed, and I think that good journalism has never been better. And we face tremendous challenges, but I think that we can accept that audacious challenge and recognize that we should have an enormous sense of mission, a privilege to cover these times, for the stakes are high, and after all, this is why we enter journalism. So my views about covering authoritarianism were very much shaped by my years as a young reporter covering China and the Tiananmen Square movement, democracy movement. And I want to share with you some of the glimpses from that period. And in particular, when I moved to Beijing, we had to live in the New York Times official apartment, and we knew that it was bugged by state security, partly because one of our Chinese friends worked part-time translating conversations in our building. But we didn't know quite where the bugs were. And then a friend pointed to this little screened off kind of cubby hole as you entered the apartment. And he said, that's where the bugs are. Well, I wanted to get to the bottom of this, so I got a ladder. I pried off the screen. And there was all this electronic gadgetry inside. And I was so proud of myself that I recognized the Chinese characters on the big gadget in front. And those Chinese characters read, electronic sound carrying device. I was just, we've just arrived in Beijing. My Chinese is so brilliant that I've figured this all out. I've mastered this assignment. And my wife and I were very well prepared for this moment because we'd read a bunch of spy novels. And so we retreated to the bathroom and turned on the shower and whispered into each other's ears as we tried to resolve this. So what do? We figured we could leave the bugs in place, we could smash them, or we could leave them in place and use them as a disinformation channel to Chinese government. And so this is a smart crowd of professional journalists, so what would you guys do? I'm curious. So how many of you would take the well-behaved option, you would leave them in place? Raise your hand. Not a particularly well-behaved crowd, okay? How many of you would smash them? And how many of you would leave them in place but use them as a disinformation channel? I'm just going to take a few names down. The Chinese government pays me a little, and great minds think alike, because my wife and I had just arrived at that conclusion when at that moment a friend arrived at the front door and we found out what an electronic sound carrying device is in Chinese. It's a doorbell buzzer. But frankly, that was so useful. And it was a reminder that just when you think you figured it all out, that you are the master of the universe, that you've nailed it, that's the moment to really beware and step back and take a pause. It's an incredibly useful lesson when you're a foreign correspondent in a different society. It's also, I think, a useful reminder at a time when politics in this country is so toxic and we're so divided. And a second lesson came soon after, when we were covering the Tiananmen democracy movement. And frankly, I look back at that period with a certain amount of shame in the way I wrote some of it. And in particular, I often referred to the workers who were the backbone of the democracy movement. And I wrote somewhat condescendingly that they say they're for democracy, but they can't really define the kind of democracy that they want to create. They can't outline the guardrails or institutions that they would use to make it work. And that was all true. But that terrible night of June 3rd to 4th, 1989, when the troops moved in from all directions to Tiananmen Square to mow down the students, some of the bravest people were these uneducated workers and peasants on, I'm sure many of you know, the airport road going in from the airport to Beijing. Now it's a highway. Then it was just a two-lane road, and there was a salt-of-the-earth bus driver who was on that road. He'd heard that troops were coming in to crush the students, and then he saw a huge convoy of trucks filled with soldiers, and he hurriedly parked his bus across the road to block it, and he turned off the engine, and he took the keys in his hand, and he stepped out of the bus. The convoy had to grind to a halt. An officer got out of the lead truck and ordered him, "Move the bus." And the bus driver said no. And the officer pulled out his sidearm and repeated and said, "Move the bus." And this bus driver had the keys in his hand. It was night. He hurled the keys as far as he could into the high grass by the side of the road. Somebody like that might not have been able to define the democracy he wanted, but he was willing to die for it. And in recent years, it has struck me that some of those folks in Beijing, or people I covered in Arab Spring or other countries around the world, that precisely because they did not enjoy freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, precisely because they did not enjoy those rights, they understood even more than we do, perhaps, the value of them to a free society. And I've come to think that we can learn an awful lot from those folks who risked their lives for democracy, whether in Beijing or in Egypt and so many other places around the world. I think of a Chinese friend, Wu Xiaoyong, who was a senior executive of Radio Beijing English Service that night. And he, when the troops were opening fire on the students, he quickly wrote out a script about the bloodshed and the massacre that was unfolding. And he gave it to the newsreader to read out. And troops quickly showed up at the radio station and wanted to arrest the newsreader. And Wu Xiaoyong said, no, he's just reading what I gave him. I wrote that script. I take responsibility. And so ultimately, they arrested him. And he spent 2 years in detention. And I've often wondered whether in that kind of situation I would have the guts to take responsibility as he did. But we know that there are many journalists around the world, in countries from Russia to Turkey, Ethiopia, China, who face those questions, and they do take responsibility, and they do take these risks because they understand those stakes. And likewise, some of the prize winners tonight have faced enormous risks, whether in Gaza, in Syria, in Haiti, in Ukraine. And I think that their courage and commitment can inspire us all. If they can stand unflinchingly for these freedoms, then so can we all. And I'd also just like to make the point that the reason authoritarians try to crush journalists, and the reason authoritarians denounce journalists, is precisely because they recognize the importance of what we do. Their arrests they engage in, the denunciations, they are a measure of the importance of our work. They're a tribute to journalism, and we need to recognize that. Now, given the challenges in Washington and around the world, I think we're going to face plenty of ethical challenges, each of us, and they're going to be very hard to navigate. And there are going to be no obvious answers to some of them. My most challenging ethical dilemma is one that I think even many of my colleagues at the Times don't necessarily know about. Shortly after, when my wife and I covered the Tiananmen Square, the massacre and the crackdown afterward, there was a young man at Tsinghua University who had helped us cover them. And he had gotten into trouble because he had admitted us into the Tsinghua campus and registered us. And then afterward, he was secretly feeding us information about the crackdown. He was then arrested. He was imprisoned. And he escaped from prison and came to Beijing and asked me for help fleeing the country. What do you do? It's a pretty basic rule of being a foreign correspondent that you don't help escaped felons flee the country. On the other hand, here's a 19-year-old kid who had gotten into trouble only because he had helped New York Times readers and had helped us. And if we didn't help him, at some point he was going to get caught and pay a terrible price. And then compounding it all was, I'd never heard of somebody actually escaping from a Chinese prison. And I couldn't help wondering, could this all be some kind of a setup to try to catch us helping somebody? And what were our obligations to the New York Times? If we were caught helping him, the bureau might be closed, we could be arrested. And yet again, here's this 19-year-old kid. And I truly didn't know what to do. My wife's moral compass, fortunately, was better than mine. A lesson, always listen to your wife. And we did help him with as few fingerprints as we could possibly manage. He was able, with our help, to get to Hong Kong. I flew to Hong Kong the next day, and he's now in the US. And what's the lesson? I'm not entirely sure. I think there are few things that I've done that were so unprofessional, but few things that I'm prouder of. And the lesson can't be that we should be unprofessional or that we should break laws. But I do think that maybe one lesson is that our professional responsibilities have to be leavened in some form with a recognition of a larger social context, a recognition that the kind of journalism we practice in some way reflects moral choices, There are moral choices in what we cover, in who we quote, in the stories we profile, in the language we use. And this can be dangerous. You know, one journalist's moral purpose can be another's megomaniacal crusade. But we will make mistakes and we'll disagree about where that moral compass points. It always needs to be restrained by that sense of humility that you feel when you discover an electronic sound carrying device isn't what you think it is. But never doubt the importance of harnessing journalistic principles to something larger than ourselves. Now, we in journalism, we pretend to be cynics, but you scratch a cynical journalist and an idealist bleeds. You know, why do we go into journalism in the first place? It's not because of the family-friendly hours. It's not because of the pay. And I think it is because of some recognition, some belief that this is a public good, that we are serving a public interest in a larger sense. And I think that's what that Chinese bus driver recognized as well when he risked his life for a freer society. So courage. You all are doing incredibly important work. I said before that this is a test for our country, for all of us, and I truly believe that. And, you know, we've been tested before, and the truth is that sometimes we have been found wanting. And I think that one reason I've written a good deal about refugees over the years is because, having looked at how we've covered things in the past, I've seen profound failures of that test. You know, in 1941, when the U.S. was barring most Jewish refugees from the U.S., including denying Anne Frank's family 3 times a visa to come to the U.S., the New York Times published on the front page an article raising questions about whether Jewish refugees, if admitted, might actually be Nazi saboteurs. It's heartbreaking to read this. I look back at how we covered the internment of Japanese Americans, and one of the first articles about it quoted Japanese Americans in a way that made it sound as if they were happy to be shipped off to these camps. And again, you just wonder how this could be. And of course, to our eternal shame, we and other organizations largely neglected the Holocaust. But there's also recognition of so many other tests in journalism that we passed with flying colors. What Edward R. Murrow and others did to take down Joe McCarthy, the Pentagon Papers, coverage of the Vietnam War, Watergate, Me Too. And this year, there's just so much extraordinary work coming out of Washington and elsewhere about what has been happening to green card holders and others, to USAID, to the courts, happening around the federal government. And the winners tonight, certainly a reflection of that courage and commitment to the sense that we are connected to a cause larger than ourselves. Now, I noted at the beginning that, you know, there's profound disagreement in the journalism world about how we cover this moment in history, about what words to use, who to platform. There are generational divides as well, and I don't think they're easy answers necessarily. I do think that, in general, Marty Barron at the Wash Post had it just right when he said that we're not at war, we're at work. I'm an opinion journalist, but frankly, I think that some of the most important journalism is not the kind that involves shouting and waving fists, but rather the kind that involves shoe leather reporting that turns up new facts. Shouting at the end of the day doesn't necessarily change the world, but new information, even understated, truly does. That said, we can't pull punches. Our fidelity has to be utterly to the truth as we understand it. And we fail in that responsibility when we engage in both sidesism, We fail in that responsibility if we dispassionately observe our way to authoritarianism. And we shouldn't be neutral about upholding democracy. It feels overwhelming at times. I think we've all felt that. I've been so frustrated so often in my career covering genocide in Darfur, in Myanmar, or elsewhere, sex trafficking. You're just surrounded by so much pain, and it feels like you're not getting anywhere, not having that impact. AIDS wiping out villages in southern Africa. But I've also seen how we can make imperfect progress against these kinds of scourges. You know, in journalism, we tackle injustice. We tackle dictators with these fragile tools we carry, our reporters' notebooks and our cameras. And they are tools as powerful as they are fragile. You know where these reporter notebooks come from? Do you know the backstory of them? They used to be called Claude Sidden notebooks. And that's after the legendary civil rights reporter for the New York Times back in the early 1960s. Now, back at that time, the journalists typically carried these stenographer notebooks when they covered the freedom riders and civil rights demonstrations. But everybody could thus recognize that they were journalists, and Klansmen would set upon them and beat them and club them. The great civil rights leader, John Lewis, said that the racist mobs would first target the journalists and incapacitate them, and then go after the civil rights leaders. So Claude Sidden went to a stationery store, and he asked the stationery store to take the stenographer notebooks and cut them in half to produce a notebook that he could hide in his jacket pocket. And he then bought a case of them, and he distributed them to other civil rights reporters on the front line. And so today we have reporters' notebooks. Now, Claude Sidden wasn't partisan. He wasn't a crusader. He didn't shout. He wasn't in the tank for anyone, and he didn't tone down stories to match some preconceived narrative. His devotion was absolutely to the truth. But he did have a larger concern for context, for justice, and he refused to be a loudspeaker for racists trying to manipulate the public. So today, those racist politicians like George Wallace and Bull Connor are gone, and we were around to write their obituaries. Today, our own generation of journalists faces a similar test. And we have new tools that are a lot more complicated than reporters' notebooks. But if we stick to our principles, if we're not at war but at work, if we follow our compass as best we can, if we're humble enough to acknowledge all our imperfections, that we get it wrong regularly, if we acknowledge all that, then we will get through this. This is a historic opportunity that fate has given us. It's a privilege to cover this country at a potential turning point in its history when the stakes are so great. And decades from now, in some future crisis, an OPC speaker will inspire our grandchildren with tales of the fortitude that journalists like tonight's prize winners displayed in the 2020s. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Nick. And now Marcus will come back to the stage to introduce more awards.
Thank you so much for those powerful words, Nick. Very inspiring. And so back to work. The Malcolm Forbes and Morton Frank Award for Best International Business News Reporting in any medium is sponsored by Forbes magazine. The jury for this award also chose to award 2 citations: Ian Urbina, Joe Galvin, Maya Martin, Susan Ryan, and staff of the Outlaw Ocean Project for the North Koreans behind Global Seafood, and Bruce Einhorn, Lonnie Prinsloo, Marissa Newman, and Simon Marks of Bloomberg News for Starlink's Global Rise. And the winner is the staff of Reuters for Fentanyl Express. This ambitious exploration of the global supply chain for fentanyl exposes the vulnerabilities of U.S. efforts to police imports of Chinese chemicals used by Mexican cartels to make the drug. Spending only $3,600, the Reuters team created dummy corporations to buy Chinese goods on the internet and was able to import the precursors and the equipment needed to manufacture what could have been $3 million worth of drugs. Surprisingly, the reporting showed that the U.S. mail system is so exploitable that the chemicals often flow from China to the U.S. in small packages before being forwarded to Mexico for final production as pills. The Reuters team even discovered a new variation of fentanyl that had not been previously identified by law enforcement.
Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for this award. I'm accepting it on behalf of a team that spans most of the globe, from China to Mexico to the US, a collection of journalists, photojournalists, graphic artists, and we went about trying to open the black box that is the fentanyl supply chain. We bought everything needed to make several $1 million worth of fentanyl. However, we did not make any. We had everything shipped to Jersey City and Mexico City to illustrate how the chemicals and the equipment travels across the globe to Mexico and then onto the streets of the US, where the drug has killed nearly 450,000 people since it first appeared about 10 years ago. This is an important story as it has not entirely gone away. There are still thousands of people dying every year in this country, tens of thousands of people. And it's important to understand exactly how the drugs get here and to tell the story of why we suffer through what we do.
Congratulations. The Shireen Abu Akleh Award for Best Reporting on a Continuing International Conflict or Crisis in any medium is sponsored by the Simon & June Lee Center for Global Journalism. The citation goes to Maya Rosen of Jewish Currents for Maya Rosen reports on Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon. The winners are the staff of the Washington Post for Unchecked War. Vividly conveyed and assiduously reported, the Washington Post tore at official narratives through accountability journalism that centered on the human cost of Israel's war in Gaza. The package is a masterclass of innovative, rigorous, and empathetic storytelling.
Good evening. My name is Louisa Lovelock, and I'm an international correspondent for the Washington Post.
My name is Meg Kelly. I'm a senior reporter for the Post's visual forensics team. On behalf of our colleagues, we are honored to accept this award in the name of the much-missed Shireen Abu Akleh.
We are also painfully aware that incidents similar to those we investigated continue to the present day. Media scrutiny of Israel's military conduct in Gaza has helped reveal abuses. It has not brought accountability for victims like Hind Rajab, Hamza Dahdu, and Mustafa Thuraya.
We owe much to the courageous work of our Palestinian colleagues, Hajar Harb and Hassan Balusha, who've covered this war against the backdrop of immense personal loss, as well as Palestinian journalists, more than 160 of whom have been killed as they've risked their lives to be the world's eyes and ears in this war. Thank you.
Congratulations. Cornelius Ryan Award for Best Nonfiction Book on International Affairs is sponsored by the Norm Pearlstein in honor of his friend Scott Kraft. The citation goes to Jason De Leon of Viking Penguin Random House for Soldiers and Kings, Survival and Hope in the World of Human Smuggling. The winner is Sune Engel Rasmussen of the Wall Street Journal for 20 years, published by Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. Rasmussen's book is a deeply reported and even-handed account of the Afghanistan war's impact on the lives of ordinary Afghans, rather than on diplomats, generals, or politicians. This extremely well-written work is especially sensitive to the draconian results of the final Taliban victory on Afghanistan's female population.
I'm very grateful and frankly a little surprised, pleasantly surprised, that a book about Afghanistan can get this kind of recognition in 2025 with so much other stuff going on. I'm especially indebted to the Afghans, the many Afghans who gave me their time, told me their stories, and showed me patience and graciousness for the 8 years it took to report this book. Thank you to my agent, Elias Altman, who believed in the book from the beginning, and to the whole team at FSG, especially my editor, Alex Starr, who made the book better than it otherwise would have been. Thank you to my editors at the Wall Street Journal for giving me the time and space to write the book, and to my wife, Danielle, who is my first and my last and my most critical reader. Thank you to the OPC for the award. Our job as foreign correspondents is to report the news, of course, but sometimes it's also to go a little deeper and take the time needed to tell the stories of people impacted by geopolitical decisions made in Western capitals and whose lives continue to be impacted after the attention of Western politicians and generals and journalists has moved on. That's what I tried to do in my book, 20 Years, and I am grateful to the OPC for recognizing that. So thank you.
Congratulations. The Madeleine Dane Ross Award, sponsored by Linda Fasulo, is for the best international reporting in print or digital showing a concern for the human condition. The citation goes to Natalie Obiko-Pearson of Bloomberg News for The Egg. The winners are Rana Natour and Aman Mohammed of The Atavist magazine for Coming to America. Rana Natour's intimate storytelling plunges readers deep into the world of Layan, a defiant 14-year-old Palestinian girl confronting staggering loss from the Israel-Hamas war. Through restrained writing and deeply reported details, the story brings to life the plight of Gaza's growing number of child amputees. Judges praise the piece for avoiding tropes and covering the horrors of war with nuance and fresh perspectives. Powerful photos by Aman Mohammed capture Layan's fragility and her strength.
Hi, my name is Iman Mohammed. I'm a Palestinian photojournalist from Gaza, and I worked on this story for the Atavist magazine. What inspired me to document Layan's journey is that how much it reflects the horrifying reality in Gaza during the genocide, one that continues today with little media attention, as Gaza became the home for the largest cohort pediatric amputees in modern history. And because I've been through something similar when my newborn was injured during an Israeli airstrike, I knew how much these moments shape a child's life. But nothing could have prepared me to witnessing the severe suffering and complex PTSD that Layan had to navigate separated from her family. That's why the hardest part of telling her story was handling her raw and fragile trauma with the care that it deserved. And I'm very grateful for the support I have received from the Atavist team, our editor Say Ward Darby, and my colleague Rana Natour, who worked tirelessly to highlight Layan's journey. And while atrocities continue against children in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Congo, and Sudan, I hope that telling these stories will push the international community to act because no child should be seen as collateral damage. Thank you.
The David A. Andelman and Pamela Tillell Award, sponsored by David and Pamela, is for Best International Reporting in the Broadcast Media Showing a Concern for the Human Condition. Once again, we have 2 citations. Robin Barnwell, Toby Fitzpatrick, Darren Kemp, Dan Edge, and staff of Frontline PBS for A Year of War, Israelis and Palestinians. And the staff of NBC News Digital for The Babies of Al-Shifa, the story of survival for Gaza's youngest. The winners are Mark Sciala, John Hallman, Adrian Haspel, Louise De Valle, and Rodrigo Galdos Tanguis of Al Jazeera English for Fault Lines, Children of the Darien Gap. The Al Jazeera piece powerfully captures the harrowing journey of one of the most vulnerable migrant groups through a treacherous jungle to seek asylum in the United States. Powerful, poignant, and meticulously reported, the documentary follows a family fleeing corruption and gang violence in Ecuador, enduring profound pain in pursuit of a safer, brighter future away from home.
Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for this honor. I share this recognition with my dedicated colleagues, Leila Al-Arian, John Holman, Luis Del Valle, Rodrigo Galdos, Nico Jones, Ari Haspel, and the late Juan Arturo Gomez, who sadly passed away in January. Without his help, this documentary couldn't have been what it was. There's been a lot of strong reporting on the dangers of migrating through the Darien Gap, and we wanted to take a different approach and focus on the children and the families who are risking everything to carry them forward. Suani Flores let us film her and her family as they navigated the perilous jungle between Colombia and Panama, and what emerged was an intimate portrait of the bonds of family and how a journey like this changes you completely. When children are forced to endure a journey like this one, it reveals something tragic about the world that we've allowed to be built. May this award encourage us to continue to take risks to tell these incredibly important stories. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. The Joe and Lori Dine Award for Best International Reporting in any medium dealing with human rights is sponsored by Philip Dine. The jury also awarded 2 citations: Kim Tong-hee Young, Claire Galafaro, Laura Mofta, and the staff of the Associated Press and Frontline PBS for South Korea's Adoption Reckoning, and the staff of Reuters for The Starving World. The winners are Kadri Inzamam and Megan Rajagopalan of the Fuller Project with the New York Times for The Brutality of Sugar. This package gives voice to one of the world's most marginalized, powerless communities, women and children toiling in the sweltering sugarcane fields of Western India. The harvesting system, the reporters reveal, maximizes profits for global multinationals like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, while it forces children into marriage and into the fields. It encourages women to take advances on their pay and then agree to hysterectomies so they can keep working uninterrupted. Harvesters misled the public with a compromised rating system that claims the process respects human rights, and it is protected by the political elite who also happen to run the mills. The package is deeply moving, evoking empathy and outrage.
Hi, my name is Kadri Inzamam. On behalf of myself and my colleague from New York Times, Megha Rajagopalan, I want to thank Overseas Press Club for recognizing this work. We faced a lot of challenges while covering this story. The Indian government delayed Megha's visa, my hotel room was raided in the middle of the night, and there were times when our sources were unwilling to speak to us because they were facing intimidation from the Indian government. But these challenges were nothing compared to the women who cut sugarcane for companies like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. They had the bravery to share with us their stories of getting married when they were still children, getting trapped in endless cycles of debt, and most of all, being forced into unnecessary hysterectomies. I want to thank my editor at Fuller Project, Meher Sattar, for his invaluable support throughout this project. I also want to thank Matt Apuzzo and Jim Yardley, my editors at the New York Times, Soumya Khandelwal for her powerful visuals from Maharashtra, and Ankur Tangde for her relentless work on the ground. But most of all, thank you to all those women who were willing to share with us their stories. Thank you.
Congratulations. I now invite Scott back to the stage to present the President's Award.
Thanks, Marcus. Each year, it is our privilege to recognize one of our colleagues for exceptional contributions to international journalism. Past recipients of the OPC President's Award have included Washington Post publisher Katharine Graham, New York Times editor Bill Keller, South Africa's courageous editor Donald Woods, the AP's Kathy Gannon, Christiane Amanpour of CNN, and last year, David Remnick of The New Yorker. Tonight, it is our pleasure to recognize photojournalist Lindsay Addario for her dedication to telling stories that need to be told, stories of conflict, resilience, injustice, and hope, and doing so with courage, artistry, and humanity. She has documented some of the most pressing global issues of our time, from the battlefields of Afghanistan to the refugee crisis in the Middle East, to the struggles and triumphs of women in the most challenging corners of the world. She has survived kidnappings, dodged bullets, and navigated war zones, all while maintaining an unshakable commitment to showing the world what it needs to see. Her images don't just capture moments, they capture truth, emotion, and the raw, unfiltered reality of life in ways words often cannot. I'd like to invite OPC Vice President Sandra Stevenson, an award-winning visual journalist and who has worked with Lindsay off and on for the last 25 years or so, to make the official presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for giving me the chance to speak about Lindsay and what she means to me and what she means to the industry. I've always believed it's important to understand where people come from, to truly appreciate how they see the world, especially a visual storyteller such as Lindsay. So here we go, Lindsay. Lindsay Addario, one of 4 daughters born to hairdressers Camille and Philip Addario from Westport, Connecticut. Her mother, the daughter of first-generation immigrants, also grew up in Connecticut. And for those who are not aware, there is a podcast out there that features the lives of the Addario girls. You hear the compassion, the free spirit, and the inclusivity that shaped Lindsay's upbringing. And you start to see how all of that shapes her work today. As Scott mentioned, my path has crossed with Lindsay off and on. Actually, it's almost 30 years, Lindsay, just in case. I'm not counting. But they've crossed paths starting from AP, then briefly at Corbis, and finally during my time at the New York Times. Even though I'm no longer part of the Times family, I've continued to follow her work and even picked up a story from her post-NYT. As a photo editor, you're not just juggling platforms, print, digital, on-platform, off-platform. You're juggling people, personalities, timelines, deadlines. And the biggest challenge, finding the right photographer for the story. Working with Lindsay made that so easy. She's one of those rare people who just gets it. The stakes, the nuance, the people, the land, no matter where she is in the world. Her eye shows that she is no stranger in a strange land. Authenticity. She's the kind of person who, as my mother would say, can make lemonade out of lemons. In 2019, she was paired with a Times reporter to cover women in their final stage of training to become Marines at Parris Island in South Carolina. When the reporter was pulled from the assignment, and I actually can't remember why or really what happened, Lindsay didn't miss a beat. She saw the value in the story and the rare opportunity it presented. She covered it, she wrote it, and it was amazing. The same time that year, Lindsay was zeroing in on what was happening at the US border, specifically to pregnant migrant women. She had sources in the Rio Grande region feeding her what was going down. I remember one of my daily 7 a.m. calls with my parents, as they were always glued to MSNBC 24/7. My mother said, "We must tell those women's stories as they deserve to be heard." Lindsay and I pushed gently but persistently to get the national reporter on board. And over the course of 2019 and 2020, she walked away with not one but multiple stories, powerful pieces. Some she wrote, and some, of course, she worked with the reporter. I know these are just small moments in a really vast and decorated career, and I don't need to remind all of you in the room, as Scott has, of all the awards, 2 kidnappings, conflict zones, near bombings. She's authored 2 books. Any of these accomplishments would merit the President's Award. But what stands out to me the most is that she's a wife, she's a sister, she's a daughter, she's Noni's granddaughter, and most importantly, the mother of 2 boys. And yet here she is, fearless, compassionate, selfless. She understands what it means to be a journalist and the challenges that come with the profession if you want to do it right. She values life above all else, and I believe that's what drives her. That's what pushes her to cover the stories others might overlook, the ones people say won't resonate with our audience. But she knows each photograph from her work chronicling the meat packing district in the 90s, to women firefighters in California, to women protecting the Amazon, and I could go on and on and on. But before she comes up to accept her award, I really would like to read a quote from Megan Lorem, Director of Photography at the New York Times and my former boss. Lindsay is not simply a brave correspondent, not merely a gifted documentarian, a visual historian, though she embodies all of these things. She is also a beacon of mission-driven ethical journalism, constantly reinforcing through her work what a true public service visual journalism is. We all owe her a debt of gratitude for her fearless commitment to the work of bearing witness, of giving voice to the vulnerable, and revealing the world in its complexity. It's truly my honor to present the award to Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That was really beautiful. Okay, my goal is to get through this without crying because for some reason I always cry when I speak, so we'll just say it's PTSD. I'd like to start out by thanking the members of the board for honoring me with the prestigious President's Award. To the President of the OPC, Scott Kraft, Executive Director Patricia Krantz, who was always on hand to answer many questions, and the New York Times, among many other publications, for offering me the opportunity to continue going on assignment for more than 2 decades. Standing in this room in front of so many of you old friends, foreign correspondents, photographers, and editors I have long known and admired is incredibly intimidating. Lydia Polgreen, who in full disclosure is here as one of my guests tonight, and I used to run around the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2006, arguing over just how early I could beg her to go out at dawn in the morning to start working to get morning light, 5 a.m. Moises Saman, the recipient of this year's Danish Siddiqui Award for his brilliant photo essay, has been a friend and colleague since I met him 25 years ago, both of us in our 20s and starting our careers in New York City at the AP and Newsday, covering perp walks, the Abner Louima trial, Mayor Giuliani at City Hall. Nick Kristof, tonight's keynote speaker, has for years motivated the public to action with his columns and who is as passionate about journalism today as ever. You have all inspired me to continue to push me to be a better photographer and journalist with your decades-long commitment to documenting the injustices of our world today. There are those of you I know and with whom I've had the great pleasure to work, and those of you I don't know, but for whom I have immense admiration from afar. Some of you are here this evening being recognized for your incredible work. Tonight, I'd like to dedicate this award to all of you, to local journalists, translators, drivers, producers covering conflicts, human rights abuses, and humanitarian crises at home, in your own countries, outside your own front doors, at great physical peril and emotional toll, from Gaza to Ukraine and in countries around the world. I would like to pay tribute to you, to your sacrifice, bravery, determination, and commitment. You have shown the world what so many in positions of power do not want us to see. You are working while displaced from your homes, in dire conditions, under bombardment, and under threat of being drafted, while already performing the service of journalism in your respective countries. You are covering the funerals of your loved ones and colleagues. You are so used to the sounds of sirens, drones, and explosions, you likely can't fathom what 8 hours of sleep straight is, or peace, anymore. I know this because I've spent my career working alongside local journalists and translators like you, Andriy Dubchak and Lyubov Sholudiko, I can't pronounce her name, sorry, in Ukraine, Ursaida Amami in Afghanistan, and Khalid and Wahid in Iraq. Together, we have endured the fear of being kidnapped outside of Fallujah, the tears from watching cancer slowly ravage the body of a 6-year-old in Ukraine, or women set themselves on fire in Afghanistan. On the morning of March 6, 2022, Andriy Dubchak and I narrowly survived a mortar attack in Ukraine, which killed a mother and her 2 children and a church volunteer, roughly 50 feet away from us. I had somehow convinced myself, between the time of the attack, diving for cover, photographing their lifeless bodies, and fleeing the scene under incoming rounds, that somehow the attack wasn't really that close. It wasn't until I got back to the hotel that CNN's Clarissa Ward, who's also a good friend, messaged to see if I was okay. I couldn't understand how she knew that I had just survived an attack. When she came to meet me in the hotel lobby, she showed me a video of Andriy's that he had posted on Facebook. He had been rolling the entire time we were under fire. While I was diving for cover, he continued rolling. It was Andriy's video that ran in tandem with my photographs, and together with my photos provided proof that civilians were deliberately targeted in Ukraine. His video added weight to my photographs, and his presence and partnership in the field helped give me the courage to stay when those first mortar rounds came in. But throughout my career, I've had the great luxury of leaving a war when I needed a break, except of course when I was kidnapped. And I cannot fathom how any of you continue to soldier on and report, write, and photograph while compartmentalizing all of the trauma and incessant fear for the futures of yourselves and your loved ones. I have the greatest admiration for you all and dedicate this award to you. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, as of April 15th, we have heard at least 175 journalists and media workers were among the at least tens of thousands of people killed in Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and Lebanon, making it the deadliest period for journalists. Others put that number well over 200. Most of these journalists have been killed in Gaza and with impunity. In theory, journalists are civilians and should be protected by international law, and deliberately targeting civilians constitutes a war crime. But what does it mean when we live in a country that no longer respects international law and is not a signatory to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and questions the validity of truth? I guess the work of journalists becomes only more important. We live in an age where facts and reality are disputed, where the act of documenting reality has become political. We must fight more than ever to continue to do our jobs, and do them well and with integrity and unwavering commitment so that facts can no longer be disputed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And now back to Marcus to present the last group of awards.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lindsay. Whew, such powerful words and such an extraordinary work. Thank you. The Whitman Basal Environment Award is sponsored by Robert Serio. The citation goes to Katie Surma and Nicholas Kuznets of Inside Climate News for cashing out. The award goes to Maria Abi Habib and Brian Denton of the New York Times for Is a Green Revolution Poisoning India's Capital? The pair spent years uncovering and documenting the shameful secret behind a powerful conglomerate's supposed state-of-the-art power plant meant to convert waste into green electricity. The plant instead was pumping out thousands of tons of toxic air and ash and dumping it near playgrounds, homes, and schools. This investigative story has it all: dogged reporting, firsthand accounts, meticulous scientific evidence, and a stunning multimedia presentation.
Hi there. I'm Brian Denton, a photographer for the New York Times, and this is Maria Abi Habib, investigative correspondent for the New York Times, and also my better half.
I remember when Brian came to me with this story. We just had our second child, and like everybody else in India, we were choking on the air pollution that blankets New Delhi, the capital. No matter how much money you have in your bank account or what caste you come from, everybody has the same affliction, which is this toxic air that they breathe every single day. And the way that people speak about air pollution in India is as if it's this act of God, even though it's one of the most polluted countries in the world. And the government does a very good job at harassing environmental scientists who are trying to monitor the pollution or seek solutions. Yet we found that one of India's largest conglomerates with business interests from Australia to Ohio was pumping some of the world's nastiest chemicals into the air of New Delhi, and also dumping extremely dangerous chemicals into public facilities like playgrounds and schools and much more, poisoning up to 1 million people. So for 1 year, or for 5 years, we tested the air and soil in the heart of New Delhi. We waded through trash, we sifted through toxic ash to bring you the report that we are so pleased. Thank you so much for honoring us tonight with this award. Thank you, OPC Board. And who else do we need to thank?
We also need to thank our colleagues Ravi Mishra and Suhasini Raj in India, who were instrumental in helping us complete this reporting. And also our editors at the New York Times, who gave us a 5-year-long leash to bring this story that you're honoring us for tonight.
Thank you.
Congratulations. The Robert Spears Benjamin Award for reporting on Latin America is sponsored by Ginger Thompson and Tony Cavan. The citation goes to David Culver and CNN staff for gang-filled unrest in Haiti. The winners are staff of the Washington Post for The Takeover. This 9-part series takes readers across Latin America to show how criminal gangs have seized control of growing swaths of societies, undermined democratic rule, and fomented violence in every corner of the region. We meet a trafficker who used his illicit millions to hide in plain sight as a mediocre soccer player on second-rate teams. Indigenous Brazilians whose Amazon village life has been upturned by murderous gangs, and the beleaguered Mexican tortilla makers extorted by the cartels. We learn how traffickers have converted the Galapagos Islands into a gas station for boats moving drugs north. And we travel down an inland river system to observe an elaborate network that moves drugs south through Paraguay and Argentina to Atlantic ports and on to expanding markets in Europe.
My name is Samantha Schmidt, and I'm the Bogota Bureau Chief for the Washington Post. For more than a year, our team reported on the expanding power of organized criminal groups across Latin America. I investigated how international drug traffickers have turned Ecuador, a once peaceful country, into a crucial transit point for cocaine. Mary Beth Sheridan wrote about how Mexico's economy has become increasingly penetrated by crime groups to even include the tortilla industry. Kevin Seif told the story of Sebastián Marcet, the cocaine kingpin who hid as a professional soccer player. And Terry McCoy examined how the PCC is taking over illegal gold mining in the Amazon forest.
This is Mary Beth Sheridan. We'd like to thank our amazing editors, our photo, video, graphics, and design team, and reporters Marina Diaz and Arturo Torres. We'd also like to recognize the brave souls who shared their stories with us, often at considerable personal risk. Whether PCC militants in Brazil, a jailed prosecutor in Guatemala, a Paraguayan soccer coach, or Ecuadorian TV journalists taken hostage.
Congratulations. The Kim Wall Award for Creative Digital Storytelling is sponsored by John Donashevsky and Drew Menaker. The citation goes to Serene Chong, Clara Ferreira Marquez, Wei-Lun Sun, Krishna Kara, and Yasufumi Saito of Bloomberg News for the clandestine oil shipping hub funneling Iranian crude to China. The winners are Joseph Dyke, Rowena Da Silva, Nathan Walker, Nicolas Human Mortensen, Sanyana Verghese, and the staff of Air Wars for cutting-edge open-source investigations into harm in Gaza. Air Wars' investigation into the war in Gaza represents excellence in digital storytelling by creating the world's largest public database of civilian harm. The project speaks directly to the watchdog mission of journalism, while the visually stunning interactive breaks down an overwhelming amount of data into a digestible presentation. The goal is simple yet powerful, showing us the human cost of war.
We're the investigations team at Air Wars. It's a great honor to receive this award. Firstly, we would like to thank all of our researchers, geolocators, and volunteers who have been rigorously documenting civilian harm throughout the war. In a conflict where international journalists have been barred from entering Gaza, the world has too often had to rely on images, videos, and testimonies posted on social media. This footage, taken by Palestinians, not only journalists but ordinary civilians, has been essential in revealing the human toll of the conflict. By contrasting these civilian testimonies with military airstrike footage, our film sought to dispel the official narrative of precision warfare and to uncover the truth. But open source methodologies alone cannot convey this story, so our ultimate gratitude is to the families who spoke to us, many of whom relived in detail the toughest moments of their lives.
Congratulations. The Roy Rowan Award for Best Investigative Reporting is sponsored by his son, Marcus. The citation goes to the staff of the New York Times for 48 children were taken from Ukraine. Many are up for adoption in Russia. And the winners, Natalie Kitrioff and Paulina Villegas of the New York Times, for Mexico's fentanyl machine. It's hard to find a more dangerous reporting subject than Mexico's Sinaloa cartel. But New York Times reporters Natalie Kitrioff and Paulina Villegas not only provide a sweeping account of the vicious drug cartel's billion-dollar operation, but skillfully gained entry to one of its secret fentanyl labs to see how the deadly drug is prepared for the American market. Pursued at great personal risk, this daring investigation presents a gripping picture of the workings of this violent organization and how its sophisticated operations keep it one step ahead of authorities.
We're so honored to receive this award. Thank you so much. We started doing this reporting because we wanted to understand the billion-dollar business behind this drug, fentanyl, that's killing so many Americans. And to do that, we knew we needed to get inside the Sinaloa cartel. Getting there wasn't easy. It required multiple trips to Sinaloa, it required navigating a cartel war, and it required talking to a lot of people inside this criminal organization, from cooks to high-level operatives to chemistry students recruited to make the drug stronger and make it from scratch. We spent long hours building trust with sources who took considerable risks just by talking to us. And we also relied heavily on local contacts who wanted their identities kept confidential, but who were indispensable to the work, and who put their own lives at risk by doing it, by putting us in a position to tell these stories. None of this reporting would have been possible without them.
We're deeply grateful to everyone on the ground who participated in these stories, as well as to our editors and colleagues who supported this work. We share this award with all of them. Thank you.
Congratulations. The last award, the Flora Lewis Award for Best Commentary, is sponsored by Mark Limke. The citation goes to the New York Times opinion staff for At the Brink. The winner is Dr. Samer Attar of the New York Times opinion section for 2 weeks in Gaza's ruined hospitals. The Chicago-based surgeon recorded video diaries during a volunteer mission to Gaza. This chilling testimony from inside Gaza's emergency rooms provides a haunting picture of the unrelenting bloodshed occurring outside its walls. Attar is a brave witness who admonishes us not to look away and to recognize the humanity of these victims of war who cannot escape. Dr. Attar is unable to attend because he is currently...
Alexander Stockton.
I'm Amanda Sue, and we're journalists with New York Times Opinion Video and the producers of this film.
We're honored to accept this award on behalf of our team and Dr. Samer Attar, who has volunteered in war zones for more than a decade. He served as our film's subject, narrator, and even its cameraman.
If you've ever met Dr. Attar, you'll know that he's incredibly humble and not a huge fan of the spotlight, which explains why he asked us to record this video in his stead. In fact, he was initially reluctant to even appear in the film at all, not wanting to detract from Gazan doctors and patients.
But the death and destruction Dr. Attar saw was so catastrophic that he felt compelled to document it, and thus recorded his third volunteer medical mission there for this film.
We're grateful to Dr. Attar for his collaboration and his courageous work, not just performing life-saving surgeries, but also bearing witness. We'd also like to thank our editors at New York Times Opinion, Adam Ellick, Jonah Kessel, Kathleen Kingsbury, and Matthew Rose for their guidance.
And finally, we'd like to recognize Dr. Attar's brave colleagues in Gaza, many of whom you get to meet in the film. We hope we're able to capture not just the suffering, but the resilience of the health and rescue workers who continue to save lives despite insurmountable odds. Thank you.
Dr. Attar was actually planning to attend tonight, but he's unable to attend because he is currently stuck in Gaza on his 6th volunteer medical mission there. The hospital he is volunteering in was recently bombed, and accepting on his behalf are his producers, Amanda Sue and Alexander Stockton. That's the end of our awards presentation. Citation winners who are here tonight, please make your way to the head table to pick up your certificate. And now I turn it back to Scott.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Great job, as always. Thank you for joining us this evening. Congratulations to all the winners, and please enjoy the after party hosted by Bloomberg in the reception area. Thank you.